Hey everybody, we're finally here. I've been going through a lot of X-Men stuff in the past several months, going through all the solo stuff with solo Cyclops, Gambit, Wolverine, Magneto, Jean Grey, etc. Then going through all the uh, iconic X-Men moments like Onslaught, uh, Days of Future Past, of Fatal Attractions. Not Fatal Attractions. Did I do Fatal Attractions? I don't know. Pretty sure I did. But, so on and so forth. So now it's all been building up to this moment where it's like honoring what came before with the X-Men into this massive, for the time in 2019 up until fairly recently, the new status quo of the X-Men, called House of X and Powers of X, written by Johnathan Hickman, art by Pepe Larraz. It's one of my favorite. Honestly, it skyrocketed, being like my top five, probably my top five favorite comic book events ever. I freaking love. I'm not going to bury the lead here. It's one of the best X-Men stories of all time, and going through all what different characters and Mystique and Jubilee and Apocalypse, all that stuff, and all the Age of Apocalypse stories and all the other stuff has been building to this, because once I go over some few things as I go over this story, it all gonna be bringing stuff back from what we learned from like previous stories that hits home. So I got like 10 files for not flash drives, but 10 files for like slideshows. So it's kind of like uh you know uh what's the word? But it's just like right on the money that I have, House of 10 or House of X, and I got 10 files for slides. And it's been some character retcons here and there, but done very well. More often than not, retcons tend to be lackluster or hackneyed, but this one, where there'll be like a serious retcon of an X-Men supporting character known as Moira McTaggart. If you remember Moira McTaggart from the X-Men TV shows, the you know the 90s X-Men shows, including the continuation of 97. But anyway, before we continue, please follow me in the links in the description below, like my Twitter, Twitch, YouTube channel, TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. Links are in the description below. Let's begin. So, we get some opening scenes where different X-Men characters are planting these plants in vital areas. You see Colossus, Storm, Iceman, and Armor. And then other characters go like DC and Jerusalem, and Iceman is on the moon, and Armor is on Mars, I think. And turns out these plants grow into gateways that can take them all over the place. Mutants all over the place. You see there, like Beast, so these ambassadors from different countries are escorted to a splinter section of this island called Krakoa. If you remember Krakoa from Giant Size X-Men, that kidnapped several mutants from the X-Men roster on a couple of missions, that Professor Xavier brought in a new group to try to rescue those guys. And it turns out Krakoa is a living island. So now it's being utilized to house many mutants, and you're wondering, as you're reading through this, Magneto and various X-Men are seemingly working together. Not unheard of, but you see Magneto with a brand spanking new white costume. There's you're wondering, oh, how is this going on? Like, what's going on? What is this? Why is he on Krakoa? What is this like going on with these ambassadors? Well, Professor Xavier and Magneto and many mutants are establishing a new country with their own set of rules and guidelines, and they want it to be acknowledged. So that's why these ambassadors are coming on to take a look around. Here. Now, normally I don't do this, but if you're reading through this event, there's these little interludes with some data that you could like take some time to look over, and it introduces some context to certain things that you might be curious about. Here, like the flowers of Krakoa. The mutants island of Krakoa is not just the home of mutants and seat of their nation state. It's also the only known producer of the primary economic resource of mutant nation, the flowers of Krakoa. And also, they're utilizing, because the mutants are creating these drugs that help humanity in order to really facilitate, because like each country has a particular resource that it trades with other nations in order to broker like some kind of camaraderie and kind of thing that only a particular country might have abundance of that other places don't, and it do some free trade, and it builds up like I said, camaraderie and understanding and broker peace in all the branches, So, the mutants end up creating these drugs that like help with Alzheimer's and extend life by 5 years, but they're not free. That's the thing. So essentially, it ends up turning them in a very rich nation. And of course, not all nations will associate with the new nation of Krakoa, like Latveria and Wakanda, for example, because they also want to make sure that all mutants from every country is considered to be like an automatic citizen of Krakoa if they so choose to, because by extension they are their family, and they should have like a safe haven. If you have any mutants there, if they should have free allowance to come to this peaceful island where they should be safe if they so choose to. Yeah, that's kind of like free trade, not free trade, but just trade. We're gonna be hop skipping from different points in time, and here we are introduced to this militant group called Orchis. Orchis is an organization made up of various other organizations that have, at least a few people who really hate mutants. Some are ex-SHIELD agents. Some are former Hydra agents. Some are former AIM agents. Some are former SWORD agents. Just various different organizations from the Marvel Universe. Not all of them, but just few people who have worked with those organizations have left them because you know, they came together on the sole basis of the fact that they hate mutants, and they're they feel like their main focus is the eradication of these particular species. Thus, Orchis was created. Uh, uh, led by this woman. I forgot her name, Gregor, and she's speaking with the husband, who's like the commanding officer on this, space station that is building this gigantic mother mode. If you don't know what mother mode is, if you know what a sentinel is that typically hunts mutants, they're created by these mobile factories, basically called master molds, and they are already gigantic, probably twice or three size. If you've seen like the animated show, they're like 3 times the size of a sentinel. But mother molds are like darn near the size of a space station that create master molds. So it's pretty much like a Russian doll of killer robots. And so they built in this particular mother mold nearby the sun, because just in case this thing, because it becomes self-aware, but just in case it goes kind of crazy, they can easily just drop it into the sun before it gets too out of hand. But essentially, they're making plans or machinations to get these things up and running in the coming days to pretty much systematically take out mutant threats. So this is like how big the thing is. It's like, could look like a giant, pupil for the sun. That's how big it is. But all of a sudden, they get on a radar, the Blackbird is on its way, which catches them by surprise. It's like, how did the X-Men know what's going on? This has been like top secret. And you'll know why, as to how they figure out certain things as they do pretty soon. But the X-Men immediately make their way to the space station to destroy this mother mold. But we go back, in Jerusalem, days prior, where you see Mystique, Sabretooth, and Toad are hacking into the system, trying to get files, from the what's that organization? That Damage Control. That was it. Trying to get certain files that was downloaded, into Damage Control. With like data plans for this. It's a little bit more in depth here. I'm blanking. It's been a couple of days since I wrapped up. I wanted to talk about this last Saturday, but something came up, so I had to wait until now to talk about it. Anyway, they break out, but they end up getting busted by the Fantastic Four. Or at least Sabretooth did. Then you go back to Magneto talking with these ambassadors that turn out not to be ambassadors, but at least one of them legit is, but the others are pretty much like emissaries under the guise, because they don't know, what's going on, to try to figure out what's what and report back. uh, which they already knew, considering the fact that you had a bunch of telepaths probably on this island that you won't be able to keep secrets from. But you get the, this place is so big, you actually get to see what's going on in different, because like these gateways from these planets take you many places that seems very wondrous and prosperous. That mutants are just out and about, from Morlocks to X-Men. They're all like just living life. Children is playing in the fields, expressing their mutant abilities. Is pretty much living free and happy. It's a very wondrous place. But one of these little blonde women, I think that's tangentially connected to Emma Frost somehow. I forgot as to what, like clones, or I don't know about clones, but something like akin to that. She uses like her little emissaries that picks up. One of them has like a gun, and of course Magneto, takes it apart. And he's like, I wasn't about to really use it, just for my protection. And Magneto's not bothered by it, because it's like, you guys want to act like you're a sheep, but it's like you all are wolves to me. But I'm trying to like you do something different here. But we'll get to that in a second. So Cyclops shows up, daps up the thing like, hey, I heard you got married recently. Mazel tov, man. Reed, Sue, like Johnny, like what's up, man? Because these guys are friends. And I'm glad Hickman kind of like brought it up. Don't treat these, because it gets kind of irksome when a writer want to make, certain characters that should know each other at the bare minimum to not immediately get into some kind of squabble. And it's like, there's some air of respect going on, because they would have helped save the world together countless of times. So it's like mutual respect, and in this case, legit friendship. And Cyclops is telling them like, yeah, I'm gonna need to get Sabretooth from you, because he is a mutant, and we're trying to like we're trying to do something here, and we know who he is and stuff, but we'll handle it. Don't worry about it. And Reed and the others like, no, we got to bring this guy in. He broke into a place and killed a bunch of people. We can't just give him to you. And of course he's like, okay, fair enough. We'll talk about this later. But and then Sue asks Psych, like, is it true what you guys are doing? Like, you building your own nation, and you're doing these kind of things. It seems very out of the place for you guys. And Cyclops was very candid with her. It's like, what's really messed up, Sue? The fact that my species time and again gets systematically killed in an innumerable like almost an incalculable level, and hardly anybody seems to care. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different now. And by the way, don't forget to tell your son when he's of age, he's always welcome to his new family. Because Franklin Richards, Sue and Reed's son, is a mutant, and he has like reality warping powers, very on like a god level kind of powers, which in recent years, I don't know which writer did this because it's kind of stupid, but it's basically trying to write a way to make sure he's not too OP, where, because in a not recent, but like a while back, I was reading like a Fantastic Four comic where in this one little one-off story where Franklin, a long time ago, Franklin kind of uses power to get rid of his powers, but every once in a while it keeps coming back up. So when he has his powers back again, he observes uses powers to observe the world or the galaxy and see if there's any kind of things that might cause a massive catastrophe. He uses powers to make sure that is since if it's too big for them, the heroes to deal with, he just takes care of that, wipes away unbeknownst to anybody else, and then uses powers to neutralize it again until it comes rearing his ugly head again. It's like, I'm glad that writer decided to write a way to, in case anybody wants to bring his powers back, he can bring it back, instead of that previous writer who just want to just retroactively just take care, write it away all over, completely, which is like dumb. Because it's kind of cool the fact that like one of the founding, the Marvel family has like a mutant kid amongst them, so that way, it kind of adds more to the Fantastic Four's like canon. But of course, it doesn't sit well with Sue and Reed because this is their kid, and the fact that Cyclops is very nonchalant about calling the mutant groups like Franklin's true family. So it kind of like it's an arrogance going around a bit, but it's not something that you can hold against them because they understood and how upset he can be with the fact that he laid it out like, yeah, like, I mean, other than maybe Ben being Jewish and like Miles Morales, Spider-Man can only, few people can probably understand about the fact that, certain people, certain groups have time and again doing everything that they can to systematically eradicate our species just because they are different. And no matter which way we try to work with them and prove ourselves to them, it ain't gonna make a lick of a difference. So we try another route to make sure, like, things will be different. We had a little intermediate thing to show off who's like a Omega level mutant. There's a few notable people here. Some you might know, and some you probably did not know was Omega level mutant. But here's the thing: we got Jamie Braddock, alias Monarch, reality manipulation, quantum. Robert Drake, Iceman, temperature manipulation. Joshua Foley, elixir, biokinesis. Jean Grey, Marvel Girl, telepathy. David Haller, Legion, which is Xavier's son. Oh, and by the way, when this came about, every, person who was ever a mutant who were probably dead or wasn't brought up for a while, all of them have been like brought into the fold. We all are bringing them in. Like, even those some people might not like, or some people, like I said, probably was dead for a while or wasn't used for a while. No, we are establishing everybody's here. New status quo. So the fact that we got like Legion, David Haller, power manifestation, he's in here. Like we're establishing everybody. Everybody's gonna be a part of this. Eric Langshire, Magneto, magnetism. Kevin McTaggart, Protus, reality manipulation. Psionic, Aurora Monroe, Storm, weather manipulation. Absalon, Mercator, Mr. M, matter manipulation. Bennett Du Perry, Exodus, telekinesis. Quentin Quire, Kid Omega, telepathy. Franklin Richards, Powerhouse. I didn't know that was his alias. I guess that is something they just decided to dub him, but they never, in the Fantastic Four, or even himself, called himself Powerhouse, not to my recollection. But he got reality manipulation as well, but it's universal. Gabriel Summers, Vulcan, Cyclops' third brother. Energy manipulation. Hope Summers, Hope, power manipulation. So everybody's coming back. Nobody's getting left out here. So here's that Jerusalem trying to establish, like some bit of symbolism for these people by Magneto, letting them know that you guys got, let us speak from the horse's mouth here. uh, because they think like Magneto's threatening them, but Magneto points out a promise is not a threat, Ambassador, and I summon you to this place wholly superficial reasons. You see, I know how you humans love your symbolism almost as much as you love your religion, and I needed you to understand. Uh, you have new gods now. I'm glad he didn't, Hickman didn't really take away what made these characters who they are, because it's something like that definitely Magneto would have said. It's something that is definitely something Magneto would have said, but there was like a subtle shift. Still there, but they steered that into a different direction where it's more of like a unified group here that nobody has no qualms, about how Magneto's carrying himself, but there's going to be some new rules for everybody. Then we get a taste of these different timelines that we're going to be going through, that we're shifting through here and there. So we got X0, the X-Men, Year 1, the Dream, X1, the X-Men, Year 10, the World. What is it? The text is too tiny to read. Yeah, it's X2, the X-Men, Year 100, the War. X3, the X-Men, Year 1000, Ascension. So that's it for this slide. So, excuse me while I prep the next one. Okay, long ago, if you recall, when Professor Xavier was still in college, Oxford, his time when he still had his legs, he was sitting by a bench, looking at enjoying the fair, essentially. And he meets this young woman. You might know her as Maura McTaggart. And I kind of wish they kept like the Irish accent, like from the animated series, because that's how I, hear McTaggart talk in that voice. So, she sits down with them, spark this conversation, enjoying the day, and everything seems to be going right, and they chopping it up, and all of a sudden she used his name, which he never introduced himself, and he's like, who are you? How'd you know me? Why don't you read my mind, Charles? So he does, and what he finds in her mind just made him just flabbergasted. It's awe. And you wonder, what's awe? What's awe exactly? What did he see? So we'll go back to the present, and Mystique hands over the information that they acquired at the damage control, which turns out to be files about the mother mode operation. And of course, Mystique was doing all this in hopes to get, she wants to find her girlfriend Destiny. If you don't know who Destiny is, she's the precog who's blind that you saw in like X-Men Evolution, if you want like a good point of origin, if you ever saw X-Men Evolution. And of course, Magneto and Xavier are saying like, soon, we'll get her soon, but we still got another job for you. And you wonder, how is it Professor Xavier standing? We'll get to that soon. But he's sporting this Cerebro helmet, a brand spanking new Cerebro helmet. And I love this look of Professor Xavier. This is like a very iconic look. It's very minimalistic, doesn't even be all crazy. It's just like a bodysuit with the, Cerebro helmet as like a mask. It's pretty dope. Very minimalistic, but it's just like, you don't even do much. It makes me go like that meme from Emperor's New Groove, Pacha. Go like it makes me go like that. It's like very nice. So they call in Cyclops, saying that he needs to gather a group of X-Men that is perfect for this particular mission. Then we go to year 100, where a bunch of these advanced robots are taking out a bunch of rogue mutants. And we see all these, it's just a wasteland right now. And we see these other group of mutants with familiar looks and powers from X-Men characters we know. There's one woman named Rasputin, which at first glance might seem like, oh, this must be like the daughter of Colossus or something. But she has DNA of a couple of mutants. She will be considered something akin to like a chimera. We'll get to that in like a slide in a little bit. But you also see this other character called Cardinal, and they're fighting off these robots trying to get to this other mutant who ultimately gets captured. But their main mission is to acquire this data to bring back through this gate to Wolverine and some other mutants. And we see this character Nimrod. Now, the character, this mutant that they capture is called like a Black Brain. And in this particular year, or this particular timeline, because Nimrod is just another advanced version of a Sentinel, or at least like a Prime Sentinel. If you're familiar with like Bastion and his little machinations of, turning humans into Sentinels, this has, taken it to further down that path, to the point where in this particular point in time, humans all but has been eradicated altogether, which kind of neutralizes any future mutants to be born. And humanity has, or at least some remnants of humanity, has just been put into a whole process of biomechanical type of cyborg beings. They call it something else, but we'll bring that name up soon. I can't really pronounce it off the top of my head. But they, at this point, had turned, or at least made their own mutants, essentially, as like hounds. And they call like Black Brains, where they're programmed to hunt their own kind, essentially. But the problem is, which is kind of funny how this is even possible, but whenever they meet up with these mutants, if they got the chance, they're easily able to convince them that they're one of them and they shouldn't hunt their own kind, and they end up betraying Nimrod and the others. And it's like, this shouldn't easily be done. It's like there's no firewall or safeguards to prevent any type of betrayal on their part. That's kind of weird, but I guess it's very nitpicky, but it's something I always thought that was kind of odd. But Nimrod puts this, mutant in this pretty much like a Bafta tank from Star Wars, but it not only breaks her body down, but it ends up killing her in the process. But they're trying to gain information out of her via these, mechanical apparatuses, because obviously she won't willingly give up information, but they don't really care about the well-being of a mutant. And as Nimrod points out, this process to get information out of you take a while, but since I'm a machine, I got the time. So she ends up dying in this BAFTA tank while gaining information from this mutant and incorporating into like the greater whole of the system. It's very horrific. These higher functioning prime sentinels. It's like zero, operations zero tolerance. Left unchecked leads to this. Because it's exactly what Bastion and Vision, where they're actually utilizing mutants to hunt down other mutants and enslaving them and things like that. It's crazy. But Cardinal and Rasputin managed to meet up with Wolverine. Now, there's a couple of people who seem familiar, like a green Magneto, but that's not really Magneto. And this Groot-looking character, that's not really Groot. That's Cypher mixed with Krakoa. Well, at least what's left of Krakoa. Because Cypher has long since died, but his power is to understand all forms of language. His body's pretty much being puppeted around by Krakoa at this point. So these people are the Apocalypse's four horsemen of this point in time, still fighting back against the Prime Sentinels. Okay, here's about the surviving mutants. Total mutant population under the man-machine supremacy. The current estimated number of surviving Homo sapiens superior is currently believed to be less than 10,000. The vast majority of these mutants are transplants/refugees no longer living on Earth or in their native solar system. Two main colonies, which make up the bulk of the refugees, exist in Shi'ar space. The first, Benevolence, is a converted transit station located on the fringe of Shi'ar space, where it has long served as a buffer between the Empire and the wild space spawning grounds of brood breeding territory. The current number of mutants living on Benevolence is just under 8,000. 8,000. The second mutant colony is located on the Shi'ar throne world of Chelendar. The less than 2,000 mutants who live here are, by treaty with the Empire, warrior stock for the Imperial Guard. Currently, 6 mutants serve as super guardians and 57 are sub-guardian classification. It has long been whispered in Imperial circles that Empress Xandra has always had ambitious plans to annex the Sol system, and the mutant guardsmen are being cultivated to be sympathetic conquerors as an enrollment for Imperial rule. Inside the mutant community, it is hoped that should this come to pass, the surviving mutants can serve as seed stock for repopulation. So it's not looking so good for the mutants in the far future, 100 years from now. Because, war just took his... war with the mutants had taken to the particular degree. Now, you might argue it's in terms of, Days of Future Past and Age of Apocalypse, this one is lesser, 3 evils, to be perfectly frank with you. Because you got, concentration camps or nearly nuclear holocaust. And this one here, at least there's still a significant amount of mutants still left, but by and large of them had just went off world and found new homes in the Shi'ar Empire because Lalandra, knowing Charles, by extension with the X-Men, feels sympathetic and found them some kind of home, even though they've been used as like breeding stock to make powerful Imperial guards and whatever. But it's far cry from the other alternatives. Here we go. Soul mutants. All living mutants in the Sol system are currently citizens of Asteroid K. After the recent deaths of the X-Hound Salabel and the Ghost Percival, the current population of Asteroid K is 8. And that's where I believe where where Wolverine and the other Horsemen are at right now. We got Benevolence, location Shi'ar Space, population 7,942. Chandelar, Shi'ar Homeworld, 1,829. And Asteroid K, Solar System 8, which I believe is not too far from Earth. So, very dwindling population of mutants at this point, where in like present day stuff, reaching to like upwards of the millions. So now we're in the year 1000, where you see the dead mutant still somehow like rotting. She's long since dead, but the information has been gathered, and Nimrod is turned to look like the ghost from Destiny 2 at this point, and it's talking to these this blue person, which I imagine is like, what's left of so-called humanity at this point, where they kind of like just merged with machines, and it's kind of like taken it to another state of quote unquote evolution to look like this. And they're waiting at this point for the ascension, which is the phalanx to come and I guess elevate them to their highest to the highest level, because it's a part machine now. They only look at like gaining more information and knowledge and just is no self. Is just like the one unit kind of situation. And this blue person looking onto this seemingly forest preserve, and he sees these like a very Adam and Eve type of people coming out of the forest. Get to that soon. Okay, done with this slide. Sorry, I couldn't risk because for some reason, like making like a separate file, you can't put too much slides into one file. So I'm trying to like just make sure that it's like, okay, do a little as possible, so that way I can just get down to the nitty gritty quickly. Oh, sorry. So we go back, way back, and we learn about the history of Moira Taggart, where she seemingly lived like a very normal life. She was raised by loving parents, grew up, met a boy, had, a handful of kids, died at like 78 or something like that, and just lived like a normal life. No problems, no weird stuff happened, just very normal life. Then she had like a second life, where in the womb she remembered her entire life previously And she, literally growing up in this house, knowing exactly, because parents thought she might be gifted, but it seems like she's like an adult in like a child's body, literally, you know, going through uh, the rigmarole of like, playing with blocks, but she has to fake this kind of stuff, even though she knows, all this stuff. She has probably like like a college degree or bare minimum a high school degree. So all this stuff is very rudimentary by her standards. Everybody's doing the exact same thing, going through the exact same motions that she already had witnessed. Even to the point where she met her would-be future husband, but she couldn't bring herself to actually, like, getting involved with this man, because like he gonna be doing the exact same thing. He gonna have the exact same quirks. Everything gonna be happening the exact same way. So like, why would I go through all that again? So she chose not to get involved with him. So her would-be kids won't be born this time. So she decided to pursue other avenues. She, took to learning about science and eventually had, gone to Oxford. And of course, we know Margaret Taggart is like the leading, what was it, geneticist or something like that, that, makes her like an expert on like, genetics, and how she came to know Professor Xavier down the line, like we always know that they knew each other. And of course, in the second life, she saw on the television about Xavier introducing himself to the world as a mutant, and there's mutants out there. So it leads her to like, oh wow, I must, be a mutant. That's probably what happened to me. I be able to, pretty much, her powers pretty much like, resetting, where anytime she dies, it's the world around her for the most part resets. So in her second life, she tries to go on the plane to go meet up with Professor Xavier, but that particular plane she gets on gets into a crash. She dies, so now she has to go through her third life at this point. This time she takes a different plane. And as she goes to Oxford, she begins to try to go and speak with Xavier, but at this point while he was in college, he seems very showboaty and arrogant, and she was kind of put off by that. And she just went to the conclusion, like, man, being a mutant sucks. It's like, it's nothing but a curse, and it leads to trouble for our kind. So she dedicated herself into finding a cure for mutant mutant X genes. She was the first one to actually come up with that, which gave her all these praise and accolades and stuff like that. And she didn't do it in any kind of malicious way, but it's something that she saw as like a solution to a problem for anybody who wants to, cure themselves. But the lab gets broken into. A bunch of her colleagues gets killed by Mystique and Pyro, with Destiny talking with her. And she's trying to plead her case, like, look, I wasn't going to force it on anybody. This is going to be, like, anybody who wants it, they can choose to get it. And Destiny points out to her, you really think certain people aren't going to use this to force this on anybody? Do you really think they're just that, noble about that, or, acknowledges, mutant rights to choose? No, they will force that on our kind. And you should be ashamed of yourself for going like creating something that will hurt your own kind. Uh, you know, I have powers too. I can, uh, uh, can see into the future in my like, well, it's not like an entire future, but it's just like potential. I really don't know how like Destiny's power works, but just in general, she can see potential futures, and that's how she was able to find Moria in this particular location. And she points out to her that because of your powers, I can't really focus onto your particular future because your powers being a reset and everything like that is, an anomaly to me. And that's an extra layer of her power. Even with like psychics, Mora actually has to allow a psychic to completely read her mind. They can't just do it on their own accord because it'll just be like a jumbled mess or just blank. I think it's just completely blank. They can't read her unless she allows them to read her. So what Destiny was able to pull from what she could is that your resetting powers isn't infinite. You already burned through 3 at this point. From what I can tell, you have 10. You had 10 lives in total, maybe 11, but you already burned through 3. So I'm going to kill you slowly, mind you, so you can remember how it felt. So you remember that I can easily find you again. And if you pull a stunt like this again, I will come and find you and kill you before your mutant powers manifest at, your teens. So if I get you then, there's no reset. That's done. Lights out. Game over. So when you come back, try to do better. And so she has Pyro, and I never liked Destiny in all actuality. As a matter of fact, in recent years, it's just like she puts me out of sorts. And it's like, and then this whole thing, because not too long ago they had this whole thing with Mystique and Destiny having this big marriage, like they're freaking Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm kind of thing. Neither one of you are very liked characters. You're by and large still bad guys, and you are not worthy for this massive, pride marriage event thing. You really do not deserve it. There's plenty of people who want to like honor same-sex marriage and something like that in the comics. These two are not really worth it. That effort. They're a complete bag of dicks. They are horrible people, not worthy of this glorious little, event of a marriage. No, screw them. Let them get married like a courthouse or something or whatever. It's not really worth a whole thing with them. I do not like Destiny and Mystique. By and large, they're just horrible people. So Mora goes through her 4th life. And so she took to heart what Destiny said. So now, this 4th life is the life that we are familiar with over the course of Marvel typical X-Men history, with the formation of the original X-Men, then the 90s X-Men, and then when the Phoenix Force took over many other mutants like Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Colossus, that kind of thing. And then further down the line, Sentinels went and killed a bunch of X-Men along with, Xavier and Mora. So that is the timeline as we have known it. But now she goes to her 5th life and realize, okay, we need to do something different. We still lose despite me going through the route of the typical good Xavier's a good person, and his dream seems like on paper the right way to go, but ultimately down the line we lose. So we need to okay, let's try a different route. So, uh, so this should be her fifth life. This is fifth life. Yeah, fifth life. She meets. She's a little younger. She takes her parents' money to leave on an aircraft to meet with Xavier when they were a little younger. So he reads her mind this time around and realizes what happened. So this kind of radicalized Xavier at this point because he's a little younger, not too wise, but it's like, okay, how about this? We will just gather them up, find just separate ourselves from humanity, and just kind of like with the Inhumans with Adelan, have like a little biodome, secret society on our own kind of situation, away from everybody. We leave y'all alone. You just leave us alone. Of course, that doesn't last long. They end up sending Sentinels to that little, sanctuary and eradicate them. They die again. So now Mora is radicalized herself to the point where in her sixth life, she trained herself to be an assassin. Very like Taskmaster, Deadpool like assassin, where she decides, okay, we need to neutralize anybody who's was ever a part of the Sentinel program. So Mora takes out all the Trask family members. The Boulevard Trask is the main person who helped create the Sentinels. So not only she takes him out, but takes out all of his family members, whether they're kids or grandparents, doesn't matter. They all got to go because nobody can take up his mantle to build these things. Without them, there's no Sentinels. There's nobody to help build these things. So that should work, right? But ultimately, no. At some point down the line, Sentinels will be created in less efficient a fashion, but they will be created at some point down the line. Just not sooner as expected, but eventually somebody will come up with the idea. So this, ends up, she ended up dying by a grotesque Sentinel thing in a factory. So, and then seventh life, she decides, okay, screw all this. I gotta go to find Magneto. She tells him what happened. I don't know how he ends up believing her, but she tells him, okay, I'm a mutant. Look, I try, every which outlet, but these guys will kill us no matter what. You're right. They're horrible people. At the end of the day, we need to nip this in the bud sooner rather than later. So Magneto ends up, going, taking a bunch of newts to send to Washington, but not only the X-Men, but also the Avengers and Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four all team up to stop Magneto. Because, despite his power, he's still only one person. No way he can take on all those superheroes. So she is ultimately in prison and dies in an escape attempt. So there's a life skipped, but one of the other lives, she ends up deciding okay, Magneto's not strong enough. So she adopted the philosophy of survival of the fittest, which matched perfectly with Apocalypse, who she works with and gathered the 4 horsemen and decides to mount a complete all-out war with humanity and anybody who decides to go against them. So a bunch of superheroes die, like it's pretty much scorched earth at this point. But I imagine this leads into the whole year 100 war, where Nimrod is pretty much like, took over. So she ended up like, fighting alongside with him to like, take on all these, machinations. But we'll get to that soon. But back into her, like, another reset. Because eventually she resets again. But now she goes back to Xavier, and now she opened up her mind to him again this time around. And he's just like, oh, God. He nearly about to freaking pass out because it's like, it's a lot for him to take in at this point. I was like, oh, God. Oh, God, we're so effed. We are so effed. So then Mora decides, okay, I try going down the route with Xavier. That ultimately didn't work. I tried to take things in my own hands. That didn't work. I tried working with Magneto. That didn't work. I tried going earlier with Xavier. That didn't work. Tried with Apocalypse. That ultimately didn't work. So separately, we can't do anything correctly. Neither one has their single right answer. Neither one of these guys' philosophy is a singular answer to their woes as mutants. So Mora decides, okay, I need to break all the effing rules at this point. So she goes to Xavier, and they hatch a plan. Okay. That's this line. Okay. Sorry. All right. So they end up going to Magneto, and Xavier beseeched to Magneto, like, we need to talk. As my friend, can you trust me this one last time and allow me to show you what's in my head? And of course, being best friends with this guy, despite their differences, it's like, for this one time, Charles, I will trust you. So he takes off his helmet, allows, their minds to connect, and Magneto now sees all the horrific situations that transpired from different aspects of Mora's life. And his first response after all that, it's like, you're a mutant? And so now they begin to hatch a scheme. Considering, what Mora went through, it's like, okay, we need this very long, like a long form plan here, and it has to go off without a hitch. With my knowledge of my life and what route we went through, as long as I went through them, we can easily plan out, the enemy, essentially. So, Magneto brings up to Charles, like, if I do this, I'm going to be on your ass, Charles. I will not give you an inch. I will check you at any moment if you begin to wane. So do not think otherwise. And Charles is like, I wouldn't have any other way. And, I don't know why Charles is always still in that wheelchair at this point. It's like, because he typically gets put in a wheelchair because of typically a war wound, wound he suffered at a war or something like that. But he shouldn't really, at this point, still be in a wheelchair. If Mora met him when he still had the use of his legs. So it's like, that is another kind of like a nitpick that seems like, that should have been kind of like erased if she kind of course correcting things. I mean, of course, he'll have use of his legs in current time right now. He'll have use of his legs and everything like that. But it's just like, whatever. So we go back to the present day. And now that they know about the whole Nimrod will be active because after the whole mother mode, is flipped on, he won't be far behind. So they need to nip this in the bud here and now. And Cyclops asked them, like, does it need to be done? And they said, yes, then it will be done. Because he's like a loyal soldier. And so Cyclops end up gathering a band of mutants for this mission. So we go back to the year 100, and Apocalypse and the others are hatching a scheme to, since one of their other allies died in the last, siege, they won't be able to be cloaked by his powers anymore. So this is kind of like a one-way trip. So I need to go inside the hub of the enemy in order to find out when Nimrod exactly turned on. So Apocalypse goes with them so they can offer some kind of distraction. While Krakoa, Cypher, and Wolverine sneak inside to get the information. And then now we go back into year 1000, where the Phalanx are arriving and prepping for, or at least, conversating with the Elder to see if, like, you guys are worthy for the ascension. Because if you're not, you'll just be destroyed. But if you are, we'll absorb any information you have that we'll find useful to the collective. And most of these blue people find that, like, oh, then we'll be worthy for that, because they think like they evolved beyond their former old human not biology, but just their history. They feel like they ascended way beyond many eons ago, beyond that at this point, and this is their next ultimate step. And you see like the process of how they like turning human people into like biomechanical beings by like literally like zapping new infants, and kind of like the whole techno-organic virus type of situation. Okay, we got the soul mutants here. We got Apocalypse, external, Wolverine, pure blood mutant, as well as Zorn, a pure blood mutant that is quite different from the Chimera Pestilence, Dane Frost North, who is the Green Magneto character, is a Chimera second generation, where it's kind of like a merging of two particular mutants like Dane and Frost to form this kind of like a new form of mutant that was created. not by them, but imagine from the Nimrod and the others. They try to use them to hunt down their people or whatever. Somewhere along on that line. Famine, we got Wolverine's war, Zorn is death. Famine is Krakora's cipher, mutant symbiotic. Just so you can get an understanding of who we're dealing with and, what's going on with the terms of chimeras. It's like, utilizing different genes for one being, creating mutants essentially, instead of allowing it to be naturally. Then we got Silo Bell, the black brain telepath, which is like the hounds I was speaking of. You see like their black, little glass heads, so like black brains. So is so we got Rasputin and Cardinal, who are third gen chimeras. Rasputin is a combination of Choir, Bane, Pride, Kenny, Cardinal, Kurt Wagner, Gray, Freeman, Priest, and then we got Percival. Percival and Cerebell died in this kind of the earlier battle. Is a pureblood mutant, Emmanuel Carter, aka Ghost. Then you got Mother, Akaba, mutant pureblood. We'll know who that is pretty soon. So this is just a general consensus of what, like I said, when you see these kind of things, if you're reading through the event, I highly recommend you go through that stuff because it offers some insight into the nitty gritty details as you're reading along. So while the others are causing distraction, the bulk of the forces comes to take care of the rest of these horsemen. And Zorn has this kind of singularity inside where the mask kind of keeps it at bay, and Rasputin kind of lifts it up to cause this utter, devastation towards these prime sentinels and the other regular sentinels to take a good chunk of those forces down with them. While we see Wolverine, Apocalypse, and Krakoa gaining the information that they need from the base. And you see like they need to pick up speed once they hear that massive explosion, knowing that that's the signal, we got to keep it moving. Okay. Okay. So now Apocalypse goes to fight the rest of them off because, eventually once Nimrod realized, okay, these guys are trying to sneak into my storage, facilities, information storage facilities, for what reason? So now he's entering the fray. Krakoa Cypher is taken out in his grand explosion entrance. Wolverine is like barely healing back together. So Apocalypse tells him like, you need to get back and give this information to her. I'll, hold everything back. So Apocalypse ends up going down trying to take on 3 copies of Nimrod. And of course, Nimrod at this point is taunting Apocalypse, which is kind of like it's kind of a surreal, because Apocalypse, we always saw him as like this ultimate force in of itself, where it's like hardly anything can take down this behemoth of a mutant. But this Nimrod, it reached to a point where three of them can eventually take down this thing, take down him. So of course Apocalypse, because he's taunting Apocalypse like, oh, the first mutant, ooh la la, somebody's gonna get laid in college. And so it's like, it's nothing, because Apocalypse goes down like a warrior, because he knows like what's at stake here. So he's willing to like lay down his life in order to, and a warrior's death, to take down this thing, to hold him off long enough for Wolverine to accomplish the mission. And he does. And that whole Aqaba mother is Mora, who in that life, when you see like her and Apocalypse fighting up for those robots, she didn't die right away. She was, she lived out this life long enough, because she kept in storage essentially and protected by these horsemen on asteroid K, because they needed some pivotal information, because she wanted to live out a life long enough to figure out some information. We'll get to the reason why, but there's certain key moments of her surviving in these grandiose years that we are seeing right now. But Wolverine, hold on. Wolverine ends up, killing her on her orders. Like, I need you to do this, because, the information you provide for me is crucial. So I trust you to do it, because you're the best at what you do. So he stabs her, and this is her 9th life at this point. So now that we're back in the present, we see the team that Cyclops gathered together. We got Angel, Monet, Jean, Nightcrawler, Mystique, Wolverine, and Husk. And they're about to board the Blackbird on their way to the Orchid space station. And here's about the different types of Sentinels we're dealing with. Sentinel, Master Mode, Mother Mode, Omega Sentinel. A human infected with nano Sentinel technology, progressively transformed from human to machine. And that's like, the zero tolerance type of thing. Then you got Nimrod, a pure nano Sentinel construct, anti-mutant, adaptive, self-aware, self-replicating, virtually indestructible. That's why Apocalypse had like a tough time dealing with 3 of those at once. Maybe he was able to take on one of them, but not 3. Then we switch over to see that Sabretooth is being put on trial for his crime earlier. And Emma Frost walks in like a freaking boss and pretty much points out that you got to acknowledge our sovereignty. This mutant belongs to the country of Krakoa. if he's going to be judged on any crimes, he should be judged by his own country. So I'm going to take him off your hands. And of course, the judge is like, oh, this is unprecedented. Like, you have no right here. You want to check with your government? I have every right here. I'm going to take him off your hands. Yeah, sure. He's an ass, but he's our ass. We'll have to, deal with him with our own justice. And so she ends up taking Sabretooth off their hands. And it's a funny little rhetoric she tells these people. Like, it's pretty much like the line of dialogue for Emma Frost is immaculate. One of the female guards there, it's like, try to stop Emma, and she is like, bitch, please. Like, normally I dominate that little mind of yours and make you stick that gun where your last boyfriend left you. But I've been told the art of diplomacy is about equalizing power dynamics. So why don't you pretend that some larger American purpose is being served here today, and I pretend like you could have stopped me. It's a brave new world coming. It's a brave new world, darling. Best you get used to it. So, yeah. They have zero, authority, with what's going on now. So it's just like, there's a reckoning coming. So now we go back to the space station where Gregor is like, she's like, how do they know what's going on? There's no way they should be able to know. So as they're preparing to board the Orcus station, her husband, the commander there, sees them breaching one of their holes. So he takes one of his guns and turns into a makeshift bomb that he attempts to sacrifice himself to take some of them with him. And he, in his last words, he tells her on the comm, like, I know we agreed not to have children because you don't want to bring them into a world with these mutants, but at the same time, I still wish we had children. And he detonates it, and it takes out most of the Blackbird, with Husk and Angel dead and Nightcrawler wounded, but still able to fight on. So I was like, okay, well, why you even bring Angel and Husk along? Like, what could they honestly do? Especially Angel, because he needs to be able to be airborne, and open space is his bread and butter. So being in a confined space on a space station isn't something that, I see his abilities being well utilized, in my opinion. It's like, why bother? And here's the critical point that I brought up earlier about if you kept up with many of the X-Men's exploits over the years, you can see why they're doing what they're doing, and you can feel their pain and sympathize why they're pulling what they're about to pull. And look at what they've done. Mutant extinction events. Genosha, Sentinel, Trask, Genocide. Let me blow this up a little further. 16.5 million dead. Decimation, mutant erasure by the Pretender Wanda Maximoff. Yeah, they've been playing fast and loose with if Quicksilver and Wanda are mutants, but I think they kind of settled on them being the mutants after a period, especially when Fox gave up the rights back to Marvel. But after the whole No More Mutants House of M event, 1 million depowered. In addition to the two mutant extinction level events, recent history has seen an uptick in the incidence of human or mutant violence. The increased number of mutant births since the Lights, which is Hope Summers' being coming to the fray after Cable raised her and helped utilize giving mutants their powers back and everything like that, has only served to provide more opportunity for these human on mutant crimes to be enacted. A list of humans who have committed major mutant crimes. Stephen Lang, Project Armageddon, 29. Mr. Clean, Jesus. Church of Humanity, 126. Grandin Creed, son of Sabretooth and Mystique. Friends of Humanity, 147 dead. Cameron Hodge, The Right, 178 dead. The Leper Queen, The Sabian League, 221 dead. Donald Pierce, Reavers, 348. William Stryker, Purifiers, 414. Wanda Maximoff, The Avengers, 986,420. Boulevard Trask, Sentinels, 16,521,618 exactly. Pre-Genosha mutant population, 17,508,236. Total mutant population of Earth, 0.0025%. Pre-decimation, 986,618. Mutants lost, 16,521,618. Remaining population of Earth, 14%. Post-decimation, 198 left. 66,420. Remaining mutant population of Earth, 29%. So that is the overall, calculation or estimate from Johnathan Hickman. Well, I guess he probably easily had done some significant research here about the past major mutant events that caused, utter genocide or just mass murder in terms of mutant life. Look at all that stuff. Especially we all remember Genosha. We've seen the X-Men show and the other devastation. Of course, anybody would be seriously pissed. Time and time again, in various different ways, whether it's small intimate amounts or utter genocide, it's just taking its toll at this point. So now back on the station, they're gonna power through and they gotta go through these forward nodes to decouple the locks in order to allow the mother mold to fall into the sun. So they all go there for separate routes. While Monet and Jean hang back to do monitor the thing, the situation. So they got 2 down and it's 2 to go. Well, it's kind of funny where, Nightcrawler is tying up, people that he come across. Wolverine just guts anybody he come across because F them. And while the Prime Omega Sentinel lady and Gregor is what is going on? How these guys are just so one step ahead of us at this point. Well, of course, things still go awry while Gregor collects herself, sends out forces to the X-Jet. Monet sends Jean through an escape pod while she stays behind and fend off the forces. And she ultimately ends up dying. Now, of course, back on Earth, Magneto, Xavier, Emma Frost, Storm, Beast, they all are monitoring the situation, being connected with Jean, who's there connected with everybody else. And Jean is feeling, each death as they're like mentally connected, and by extension, Xavier is feeling that because he's and Emma's being connected to her, so they always can keep like monitoring what's going on. Okay. We're like halfway through. Now, Mystique tries to go to decouple one of the locks, but Gregor beats her to the room and unlocks the airlock, which sends Mystique catapulting into space. She dies. Uh, and so there's while they managed to decouple one last one, there's still one left. But they won't be able to make it all the way to the other end to get to it because of the whole situation where like what happened in the room with Mystique. So Nightcrawler and Wolverine decides, okay, we need to port over to that side on the outside in space to hack that thing out, because we got to complete this mission at all costs. And this is like a complete suicide mission at this point. Things are going right, but they're going wrong at the same time, which is kind of like, you're on the edge of your seat at this point as you're reading through this. And Wolverine asks, is there anything on the other side for me? And Nightcrawler, just being like because you tend to forget that Nightcrawler is a priest. He puts his hands on his friend's shoulder and it's like, are you worried about your immortal soul? And it's like, I'm just worried, like, things that I've done and things I went through, like, I'm worried about what I'm going to, what I'm finding on the other side. And Nightcrawler, just being Nightcrawler, tells his friend, like, you'll find me on the other side with my arms held open for you, friend. And God, it's like a Nightcrawler thing to say. Like, it's like, I'm not that super religious, but if I do any kind of confessional thing, I want it to be Nightcrawler that I can just talk to. And just like every once in a while, you just need that kind of like that bit of like, like that hope and optimism that, Kirk kind of exudes a bit, And of course, there's been moments in like when Wolverine died before and he went to hell and fought the devil and things of that nature. And I think he ended up meeting his father in hell one time. I don't know. I never read it, but seeing images of that story here and there. But since they're so close to the sun, as soon as Nightcrawler ports to the area where the last lock is, he immediately is vaporized by the heat of the sun. And of course, Wolverine being his, having his healing factor, constantly repairing him, he just hacking away and just dislodged the entire thing right as Mother Mode is turning on via Gregor's orders. But it's too late. The thing is falling into the sun along with Wolverine. And you see like Cyclops watching on through the window. It's like bravest man I ever known. And it's like, God, man, And so, now it's Jean and Cyclops is the only ones left at this point. She's trying to contact him through the uh, escape pod, and he says like, I'm on my way. I'm gonna get to like a thing so I can get out there and get to you so we can get back home. Meanwhile, Gregor and the others are, had been ordered some sentinels. Was going to take a while to get to them, but they're all on their way. Different various types of sentinels. One's with a drill head for some odd reason, on to make their way up there to try to like, fend off any remaining mutants, because this whole thing is like gone pear-shaped for them. But Cyclops ends up getting shot in the back, and he's wounded, and Gregor takes a gun and blows his head off, which Jean feels, because he's like the last one she's connected to. As at that moment, the sentinels that was on their way makes it to her escape pod and tears it open and kills her. And it's just, everybody back in Krakoa is just utterly devastated. They just, but everybody's beside themselves at this point. And you just hear the line dialogue with Xavier, who points out like, they keep killing my children. They killed my children. Time and time again. No more. And it's like this big words, coming across pages, like, in different scenarios in the past of mutants who have died in such atrocities, and you just see the words "no more, no more, no more." It's like look at what they done. It's like, look at what they done to us. It's like, Genosian genocide, and like Last of the Mutants, the decimation, all these different atrocities committed up until this point. And it's just like, you just feel their anger and you empathize. It's like, you get it. It's like, okay, F all of you guys who've been pulling this stuff on us mutants for such a long time. We're done. We had it up to here with you. Okay? We tried playing ball with you, but you keep pulling this. So we got something for you. And I'm just loving this right now. I was like, okay, we got you. We got something for you. Just wait. We got something for you. So we go back in time where Magneto and Xavier meet up with Sinister, who they know through their own means that he's been, coming up with this scheme of cataloging mutant DNA for some kind of plan. And he's a little shocked at like how they knew this. But they mentioned like, we ain't trying to like, mess with it. We actually just want you to keep doing it, but we just want you to steer in a particular direction. We'll make sure you get many mutant DNA, including ours, for a particular plan for us. And one day we'll need to call on you, but we gotta erase your memory, and for now, to keep this on a hush hush until the time is right. Then we see Xavier, who's walking, and takes Cypher to the island of Krakoa. Now, Cypher also is kind of bonded with the Phalanx, which I imagine is that character Warlock. I think that's the Phalanx character name that we saw from the old cartoon show. And he introduces Cypher to Krakoa because, psychics can commune with Krakoa. We need to be able to establish like a legit dialogue, which he requires cipher in order to be able to decipher communication, so everybody can just commune with Krakoa without having to use them as like a go-between. Then we get Krakoa breaks down to cipher a little bit of his backstory, where there's kind of another little retcon where it used to be like a bigger island that was split in two because of this war being held by Apocalypse. There's a little retcon with Apocalypse where these like monstrous beings as causing this havoc that Apocalypse fended off with his OG horsemen that send that other island to a different parallel dimension and sealed off. And so Krakoa is kind of like one half of his whole self. And that's where like Apocalypse, make sure he like establishes like a new horseman. Then like, because if you look at like Ten of Swords, that kind of further explains the whole scenario. I'm just briefly breaking it down here, but highly recommend you guys check out X of Swords so you can get like the full understanding of Krakoa's history as like a larger region and what happened to Apocalypse original horsemen and that kind of thing. So check that out. Okay, now we get to see like the Krakoa system here. Interface built by Douglas Ramsey Cipher, a translation program so that other mutants can interact with the island without needing Cipher to act as a go-between. Transit monitoring, Sage. Defense operation, Black Tom Cassidy. Secondary external systems, Trinary. Overwatch data analysis, Beast. Note, while there has been no actual evidence of a Krakoan skunk work existing, there are rumors of a massive subterranean laboratory where Forge is busy building biological machines that could possibly be used to manage a mutant expansion on the island. So Krakoa is going to be like, kind of like Wakanda in a way, where it's like a mix between natural elements and machinery. So essentially it's like their version of Wakanda, but taken to like another level. So we see like the ascension happening in the year 1000. Eventually the elder gets absorbed, but the younger blue person, sorry, I ain't getting these guys' names, but the one that's been communing with the Nimrod ghost machine thing, he's having like, a crisis of faith, if you will. But we'll get to that soon. Now we're introduced to the Five, which 5 very important characters that will be fulfilling a very unique purpose that is very unique to the X-Men, which is kind of like combining their powers for like an ultimate special thing, which is crazy that Hickman came up with this, because it makes sense that you combine certain skill sets with these heroes, or just collective of certain powers, they can build to something greater than their sum of their parts. And what these 5, which I'll get into their names pretty soon, are able to do is help with the resurrection of mutants that might die. And thanks to Xavier, backs up the thought patterns and building blocks of the person, and just uh, take the information and put it into the body, so they're pretty much essentially brand new people, all with their power sets and everything. So the X-Men that died on that space station immediately starts coming back to life. And you see, people commenting on this, and I agreed, it's kind of like a weird drawing of Xavier where he's kind of like, strutting a little bit like a runway model. And it's like, to me, my X-Men. And it's kind of weird. I don't know why they drew him like that. It's kind of an odd thing. And it left, at that time when this came out, a lot of speculation of, is this really Xavier? No, it's really Xavier, and it's just like a weird posture they made him do. It's odd. And he proceeds to reintegrate their emotions and thought patterns back into their bodies. But I don't know why he didn't fix like certain things with certain mutants so they can have their powers, but it won't be like a detriment to them. Like Cyclops should be able to have fully control over his optic blast, where at this point it's not out of control, but you still see like little laser things, peeping out, rather than like a full gush of optic blast just shooting out whenever he opened his eyes. But it's like, why don't you just cure it all together? Or with like Rogue, she can still have her powers, but it's not like, she shouldn't have to worry about touching anybody. She can have full control. Don't know why you couldn't just fix that. That's another nitpick as that had about this. Like, you're pretty much, Hickman is pretty much correct in a lot of things. You could have just took the time and it's like, okay, now Rogue can't have full control of her powers. Same way with like somebody like Cyclops. There's no issue. Don't know. Oh, and by the way, I looked this up a long time ago, whereas I did like a solo review, like a review of a solo comic about Emma Frost's origins, and she has relatives, like siblings, that have powers as well. And she has an older sister. She was kind of like a dick. She never really was brought back, but she had like a brother that she trusted, and he confided into her about his, being open to her for the first time about him being gay. He is on the island of Krakoa, so they even brought him into the fold, which was shocking to me as I was going through Emma Frost's, power set when I was going through her comic book. And I found out like, oh, her brother actually is alive, or at least brought back for the Krakoa age. And I was like, oh, that's pretty stoked. So it's like I said, they did their due diligence trying to bring as much mutants that they could remember in Marvel history or just X-Men history in general, and try to reestablish them back into the mainline story where any other writer can just pick one or do whichever they get. The table is yours. Find a mutant and they're alive. You can just do whatever with them. They're here, they're alive, whatever. I thought that was really sweet. You can play around with whomever. All right. So, in this, people make a joke. Well, there's a couple of jokes about the Krakoa Island. One of them I'll get to soon. But here, people made a joke about, like, oh, they're now getting very cultish. Because, like, Storm is pretty much, like, talking with the mass of mutants looking on in the rebirth of these mutants, and it gets very Zion with and Storm is pretty much like the Morpheus here, Like, look at our brothers and sisters, they back. And it's like, it's a whole thing. It was like very cultish. And I was like, I can't lie. But you're like, by the power that is their birthright, the five have returned these mutants thought lost to us, their family, and to this place, their home. I see them. Do you? We see them, but do we know them? And I was like, and she goes to each one of them, like, you are Scott Summers. Like, how do I know you? I remember you being a great leader of Storm. Learned by watching you, Scott. And and they go down, the row of people, and it's like, it's cool, but yeah, it's very cultish. I ain't gonna lie. And then everybody's, all the mutants are just, grabbing hold of the five, and they're, stroking their shoulders and everything like that. Ooh, the five, it's the five. Like, praise the five. So here we go with the resurrection process here. Genetic base. Mr. Sinister has an extensive repository of mutant genetic material. This is where they went to Sinister with, because he's an expert at this. Say what you will, he's very good at cataloging mutant DNA. A repository of mutant genetic material that has carefully assembled in recent years. In it, he has the DNA of almost every known mutant on the planet Earth, carefully constructed with the help of Xavier. These are the biological building blocks of each specific mutant, their physical makeup, along with what their power is. Without this, we have nothing. By the way, you see these little symbols. Krakoa actually, they actually made their own alphabet system and language, which is very unique to them, which is Krakoan language, which I imagine you can actually learn, but I'd be curious to see how it's actually spoken in real time. Note, this library, which began as solely biological samples, has now been converted to holographic sequencing. And while all current mutant modifications have been limited to optimal aging, it is believed that in the future, designer modifications will be possible. The host. In the process of mutant resurrection, the genetic base is introduced into organic matter and a mutant husk is created. And while this is not the essence of who or what any mutant is, it is the essential component that makes mutant resurrection possible, as traditional cloning procedures capable of creating a replicant shall grow in real time. Any product of temporal growth is susceptible to change agents/variations. The process of the mutant resurrection. A group of 5 mutants work in conjunction to produce a biological husk. They are Fabio Medina, gold balls, and I'm pretty sure you've seen like the character that makes these golden balls that seemingly in the past were completely useless. They just seems like, oh, you just make gold balls. There's not actual gold. They're just gold coloring, and they disappear when he wants to, but they're very bouncy, and he's use them in, weird ways. He's kind of seemed like a complete joke for a long while until Hickman's Hawks and Pox. A mutant capable of producing a limitless amounts of unviable biological eggs. So they weren't balls at all. They were actually legit eggs that didn't hatch into anything. They were just pretty much just paperweights, all intents and purposes. Kevin McTaggart, Proteus, a mutant capable of warping reality and transforming an unviable egg into a viable one. Joshua Foley, Elixir, a mutant capable of biologically kickstarting the process of life, initializing cell replication and husk growth. Eva Bell, Tempest, a mutant capable of temporarily maturing a husk to a desired age. She has control over like time, pretty much. Hope Summers, Hope, a mutant capable of enhancing and synergizing the other resurrection mutants' powers to ensure the process of each resurrection. So, very clever. Like I said, Hickman has done like some serious homework. I can't imagine the time it took to come up with this extensive, excuse me, uh, like, like, uh, like information, like come up with the idea of utilizing these particular 5 people, especially somebody as useless as Gold Balls, and make him useful. That is some serious like different level of thinking that like many writers wish they can come up with something like that. That is genius. That is brilliant, man. Oh my god! Like I would never in a million years. I kid you not. I don't think anybody will come up with in a million years this particular idea to like make useless characters, at least mostly useless characters, and make them useful in a particular way. And like Gold Balls, like wow. The last time I actually saw Gold Balls in anything was in like a Miles Morales story, when like around the time when Miles Morales was like first introduced into the mainline 616 universe, and he was going to school with Gold Balls at the time. And I think that was around the time I realized Gold Balls was like a homosexual or something like that. I think it was around that time. It's like in a brief story. I can't even remember that. That's the last time I've seen Gold Balls in anything. Okay. Note, while it has not yet been tested, it is believed that upgrades / extensions / stand-ins could be assisted by mutants such as Sync or Mimic. Note, the protesis problem, where the powers of this mutant are directly associated with the destruction of its own body and are the direct cause of all psychological and physiological deviances over the years, has been solved by always having a backup mutant husk prepared for Proteus to inhabit when he burns out his old one, depending on the frequency with which he is using his power. A Proteus body normally lasts 1 week, but can last as little as 1 day during periods of excessive power use. Proteus's backup mutant husk is always created from the genetic base of Charles Xavier. The mind. A backup of every mutant mind on the planet exists. Once a week, Charles Xavier copies the latest version of every mutant mind to multiple redundant cradles located in several locations across the world. These backups are the essence of each mutant, how they think, how they feel, their memories, their very being. When a mutant husk is ready, Charles Xavier injects this backup of who they are into their husk, and that mutant is reborn. Note, there has been no experimentation regarding what happens when you combine a mutant mind with a husk that is not their own. So, like Hickman's very detailed in this. This is like insane. He like seriously, the nitpicks I have is minute, considering how well he has done some like covering a lot of his bases here. There's very little people can really complain about in Hawks and Pox because it's so detail oriented. Like listen to that. It's like he covered his freaking bases here. Like anybody who might be asking certain questions about how is this supposed to no, like this backup can provide like not only the memories but the essence of this person. Like so it is like this is Cyclops. Everything you know about Cyclops is in this new body. So don't worry about it. So now Xavier Magneto is welcoming mutants that weren't always the good guys, nor even like anti-heroes. These are were legit bad guys of the X-Men, and they all are being brought into Krakoa. Sinister and his little crew, Exodus and his crew, like M-Plate and stuff, and Apocalypse. And it's like, okay, we're all one. We need to agree here with a clean slate now, because we're all mutants. Nobody's gonna be left out. But we gotta agree that this is our home. We're treating it as sacred. We're gonna bury the hatchet as long as we agree to work together as one. No, crazy backstabbing or anything like that. We are one unit, and we have to be in order to make this work. And they look at Apocalypse, where Krakoa is just seemingly happy to see, considering what happened in the past. And it's like, Apocalypse, do you agree? We need you to say the words. And Apocalypse says, like, all I wanted for you guys was something like this. Like, well, given how you were in the past, where you just constantly trying to overthrow anything, he wasn't really like unifying anybody. He was kind of crazy, but whatever. He agrees, and him and Xavier shake hands, and it's like, okay, we are one. And it's kind of like the whole Lion King, too, is like we are one song, like we are one. And the whole backup process with Cerebro, he talks, Xavier a while back talks with Forge, and he brings up about the fact that, Cerebro, you think its only purpose is to locate mutants, but that's actually the secondary use of Cerebro. What I need to do is actually use it as like a storage unit, essentially. So he takes like Cerebro and mix it with like CR Empire's technology and Forge's know-how with technology to formulate the helmet that Xavier will be wearing in order to be able to do what he needs to do in terms of, constantly storing mutant information, so that way he can, save it into like a very, very large file, like unbeknownst on, planet Earth, and be able to utilize it in order to do what he needs to do to put in information into these husks so they can still be who they are. And establish backups in case something goes wrong. There's always like a backup to a backup to the backup to the backup plan. It's 5 backups. So here's the information with the whole Cerebral situation. Version 7.0 build C2. Originally powered by a Shi'ar antimatter engine, the current build of Cerebro now runs on a Krakoan no-place vent, converted by Force to act as an unlimited power source for mutants living on the island. Shi'ar logic diamonds still remain the primary choice for data storage and are also how Sinister's DNA sequencing is cached. Note, Forge's increasing mastery of Krakoan tech continues unabated. The transition of his prowess with traditional machine building to biological machine building remains impressive. A revolution in Krakoan technology seems imminent. Functionality: once a week, Charles Xavier copies the latest version of every mutant mind to multiple redundant cradles located on several locations across the world. These backups are the essence of each mutant, how they think, feel, memories, the very being. This process takes approximately 3 hours. Once a year, Xavier does a hard backup of each mutant on the planet. Unlike the weekly backups, this process is not a partial backup, but a fresh copy of a whole mind. This process takes 3 days, during which the process cannot be interrupted and Xavier cannot be disturbed. Note, as previously stated, while there has been no experimentation regarding what happens when you combine a mind with a husk that is not their own, it is believed that unless a mutant has some primary or secondary ability to overcome the potential damage such as a mismatch would cause, it's likely to be harmful and possibly fatal. Note, it is possible for a telepathic operator to replace their mind with a previous legacy version, but doing so is incredibly difficult and would most likely require a skilled and experienced operator. Charles Xavier has done this twice. Cradle locations where like the backups stored. House of X, which is uh, the no, I was about to say House of M, but that's Magneto's little, because the Krakoa formulates little domiciles, whatever each mutant wants it to look at. So it's large enough to house many, many mutants, many times over. So everybody has their own little home away from home in Krakoa. So you got House of X, Island M, Summer House, which is like, where the Summers family, be, the Points, and Mora's No Place. So we go back further, and we see Magneto and Xavier meet up with Emma Frost to recruit her and bring her in on their plans, especially in regards of the drugs they plan on using to broker with each country with like extending life or curing mental diseases and stuff like that. And they need her to bring back recruit the Hellfire Club essentially, and bring back Sebastian Shaw, because they need like the Black King and the White Queen respectively. And while Emma Frost will handle their legitimate businesses, because there's a comic I want to really look into called X Corp during this age of Krakoa, because it seems very interesting. But at some point down the line, I'll check it out. But we have Sebastian Shaw, the Black King, who will do the illegitimate business, behind the scenes, in case people, like underground networks, connections and stuff, to get like their drugs out there anyway. So people will be hooked on them and looking to them, irregardless whether legitimately or non-legitimately. So it's very insidious, but it's just like making sure the mutants have a foothold no matter what. So they recruit her, and task her to even though she says she just got rid of Sebastian Shaw after whatever ordeal she went through, she I just got rid of him, but yeah, we need him to handle some illegitimate businesses behind the scenes. He has the connections. He can do things that we on the surface cannot be seen doing. He can handle that. So she requires 3 seats for her services and other stuff. Then later on, Professor Xavier then mentally project to many mutants around the world, like, hey, we're establishing a home. You're welcome to come anytime you want to. And he goes to Namor, because I'm glad Hickman remembered Namor technically is the first mutant, not Apocalypse. Namor will be considered the first, at least, recorded mutant. Well, technically, Apocalypse is the first mutant. But I think Namor would have been the more, he was established in WW2, so technically he probably would have been the first modern recording of mutants. But whatever. Him and Apocalypse are probably the earliest ones, making them probably the purest and the strongest. So Xavier goes to him. It's we'll welcome you into our domicile. You can join us, Namor. And Namor, always arrogant ass he is, it's I'm glad that you guys finally realize that you are better than everybody, but I already knew this. So why would I want to join any of you guys? Why don't you come? Matter of fact, let me read this verbatim, because it's just I'm not gonna be doing it like a proper service. It's kind of you to ask. But if I'm comprehending the real reason you're doing this, it's because you finally realize that you are not them and that they will never accept you or love you, not because you don't deserve it, but because they envy you. They hate your superiority and they always will. It's good that you finally figured this, but figured this out. But let me ask you: do I strike you as someone who's just now realizing how much better I am than everybody else? And do you actually think I believe that you feel the way that way too? Go away, little man. Don't come back until you really mean it. And it's like, yeah, typical Namor. But I'm glad that at the very least, Hickman didn't forget that he's a mutant too, and that he has to be, at least acknowledged. He showed, they do this whole Hellfire Gala thing, which is kind of like a Met Gala thing for superheroes or mainly mutants, when these extravagant kind of clothing and luxurious parties and stuff like that on Krakoa, things like that nature. And Namor, Doctor Doom, Captain America, like a bunch of people show up for this kind of thing. It was very rare events where people not mutants are able to set foot on Krakoa, because Krakoa won't allow non-mutants on Krakoa through those gates unless the mutant they're accompanying with says it's okay. Like if Spider-Man or the Human Torch wants to go on Krakoa, they need someone like Cyclops or Jean Grey to give the okay. Like, no, they're good, and they can be allowed in. That is the general rule, which is very good because it kind of safeguards for any potential, Genosha situation ever happening again, because no one can come in without a mutant say so. And Krakoa, double checks too, just in case there's no malicious kind of, situation, or they're carrying anything, whatever. It's, very secure. Okay. So now Xavier is ready to implement the final nail in the coffin, essentially. So he sends out a massive mind projection to everybody on the planet. So regular people, all the superheroes, like the Avengers and Doctor Strange, like everybody, around the world is getting this feed. And I like this because it's just like Xavier is pointing out what we all, are pretty much feeling at this point. In the coming days, you will learn of several far-reaching pharmaceutical breakthroughs that have been discovered by mutant scientists. These drugs extend human life, heal diseases of the mind, and will prevent or cure most common maladies. Influenza, Alzheimer's, ALS, many cancers, gone overnight. These drugs will make life on the planet better, remarkably so. All this we have made for you. In the past, they would have been a gift, something freely given by me to you, because I believe it would create harmony between our two peoples. That was my dream, harmony. But you have taught me a harsh lesson. That dream was a lie. You see, all I ever wanted was peace between humans and mutants. All I ever wanted was to love you and for you to love us. Hold on a second. We wanted to save you, and we did, many times. But in return, all you did was stand by while evil men killed our children, over 16 million of them. So there will be no gift, for you have not earned it. We will, however, let you pay for it. In return for two things. We will provide you with the means to have a better life, one without pain or suffering and full of hope. And it will cost you so little. First, you must accept the island of Krakoa as the nation state of all mutants on this planet. We will happily go through the same process as any newly formed nation with the UN, but there is an expectation that our sovereignty will be recognized. Second, all mutants by birth can claim Krakoan citizenship. And with that citizenship, we expect a period of amnesty so that those who have been singled out as criminals or punished and imprisoned by humans can overcome man's bias against mutants. From this day forward, mutants will be judged by mutant law, not man's. These are our simple demands, and they are not negotiable. In return for mankind, in return for making our lives better, we will do the same for you. And if you find yourselves asking, who are these mutants to think they can dictate terms to us? We are your future, an evolutionary inevitability, the Earth's true inheritors. You closed your eyes last night believing this world would be yours forever. That was your dream, and like mine, it was a lie. Here is a new truth. While you slept, the world changed. So it's just like establishing, like, because we're still heroes, we'll still help. This is our planet too, whatever. But trust and believe, we're not taking any of your shit anymore. We're done. We're done. So now you're going to pay out the wazoo and earn our trust back because you kept screwing us time after time after time after time after time. So, okay, we're going, like, this is the whole thing, like, oh, okay, we got you now. So now Xavier and Magneto established a quiet council with various people. Of course, they swapped it out over time, but this is like their first main ones that we came to know. Professor Xavier, Magneto, Apocalypse, Mr. Sinister, Exodus, Mystique, Sebastian Shaw, Emma Frost, the Red Queen has been blacked out as like a secret, Storm, Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, Cypher, and Krakoa. They got the Great Captains. While the Quiet Council is the recognized ruling authority on Krakoa, when there is a state-related exertion or in times of conflict or war, the Great Captains of Krakoa assume the responsibility of defending the state. In the field, a captain has total control. Among the captains, the captain commander is considered first among equals. Cyclops, Gorgon, Bishop, and Magic. And of course, this kind of, splinters off into the new stories with X-Men with Cyclops leading, because they have their own little footholds in certain areas. Because you got like X-Corp with Emma Frost leading kind of thing, or the corporation with I think Archangel and a bunch of other people running like business stuff, which I'm kind of curious about. Never read it, but I'm kind of curious about. But then you got the X-Men with established a foothold in New York City, by the that big garden area in the middle of like the city. I forgot off the top of my head the name of it, but it's like a giant tree house essentially where they established like a hub where they can still help out New York City with adventures and stopping crime and stuff like that, like the regular. And you got Excalibur, and they have their own little group of heroes doing their adventures over like in the UK. So that's been like a lot of people have been loving X-Men related content for a good handful of years now, until very recently when they kind of dropped all this, which still bugs me. It's like, why you throw the baby out with the bathwater? I'll get to that at the end, but people have been eating good with X-Men for a good 5 years at this point. My God, that is a hell of a run. So now that they are assembling the council, their first duty is establishing some rules, because we got a culture, we got a language, we need to establish some rules so that way people won't go off the beaten path. We'll get to the rules in a minute, but they also have to deal with creed. And you wonder, like, why is like certain people like Mystique, Apocalypse, and Sinister, and Shaw's on the council? Where they want to make sure, like, okay, they doing like a particular service, like Shaw with like the underbelly, establish like connections with certain insidious levels of like networks. So he's earned like a spot on the council. And Sinister, they need to keep like a close eye on him, because Sinister is going to Sinister, so it's best to keep him close so we can keep like a closer eye on things. And Mystique, well, like in trying to keep her cool as possible, because she's just only doing it as far as like making sure, like, hey, like I want my girlfriend back, and you guys can facilitate that, but they putting that off as long as possible. You'll know why it's so. So here's the 3 rules govern. That's kind of like their like their commandments essentially. Make more mutants. Keep fucking. No murder no man. So don't go out there and just start like attacking and murdering humans unless it's self-defense. But even then, it's like, you got, layers of escape, and you always will have help kind of situation. Then also, finally, respect the sacred land, which is Krakoa. Nobody, messes with our home. That is like hard non-negotiable rules. And of course, it's Nightcrawler who came up with make more mutants. Be fruitful and multiply. So their first order of business is dealing with Creed, because they all know they won't Creed won't abide by any of these rules. He's gonna like do whatever the hell he wants to do, because he's a sociopath to the highest degree. He does not care. And so they all unanimously understand, like, okay, this is not going to work with him. We got like a solemn thing. Even like Apocalypse and Shaw and like Sinister, it's like, yeah, and Mystique, who banged him, it's like all of them's like, yeah, cast him out. And of course they know A, they know they can't kill him, and B, we need to be able to like hold them indefinitely, but not. We need like some unique means to hold them. So they have Krakoa create this kind of like a pit essentially to dump mutants who break their sacred laws. So he will be alive and like suspended animation will be fed regularly by Krakoa, will provide and everything like that. But he's pretty much there until eventually they decide to maybe parole him. Of course, in recent uh, in recent months, he eventually like escaped and doing this whole thing with like Wolverine and stuff like that. It was a whole thing, but it was like a like like a legit, like they made a prison, like a pit prison. So yeah, he's the he's pretty much like that. Well, here's the thing, he's like their devil, while Scarlet Witch, for the longest time, until like maybe a couple of years into the whole Krakoa age, where she is treated like the mutants' boogeyman, because after the whole No More Mutants fiasco, she has been like excommunicated from by many mutants for at least a good while, except for maybe a few exceptions with certain mutants. But she looked at it as like a boogeyman until like there was a whole thing where she's pretended to die by Magneto's hands, the whole thing. But it's pretty much like reacceptance by her people, essentially. But for this particular time, she was like their boogeyman, and Kree was pretty much like their devil. So now they get on with like, it's like a big massive party, and it's kind of like a combination of Endor, at the end of Return of the Jedi, with the Endor party mixed with Zion, where everybody just partying up and like just banging and doing all whatever. It's like a complete like darn near utopia. Everybody we know is alive and well. Enemies are friends now. Hatches are buried. Fresh start, essentially. And if you were so annoyed by the whole love triangle, we're thinking like Jean and Wolverine and Cyclops, and the whole thing with Emma Frost and Cyclops, all that is just like completely is like done now. They pretty much in a quadruple relationship where all four of them are just banging each other, and it's like, well, there's one way to solve that little jealousy thing. They just like get past that and they just like hook up with each other, and it's like, okay, and it's like, it's not gratuitous. It seems like it's not like super in your face and unwarranted or uncalled for, or just like done it haphazardly. It seems like it just naturally, organically makes sense, where it doesn't seem like you're pandering. This seems like, okay, this is legit. I can like my brain can like rationalize it because of the way it's written and handled properly. Hickman as a writer took his time and done this effectively. Well, most people were just like, oh, randomly, Scott and Wolverine just kiss for no particular reason because they just so angry and just got unrequited anger, and they just want to get it out. Like, no, that's lazy. This is like organic and understandable. It's like, yeah, Emma and Jean, they're getting on, and like Wolverine and Emma, they're getting on. Scott and Emma getting on. It's like, and everybody else is like just banging whoever. It's like, people loving who they're loving, and things like that nature. It's like just like a utopia. It's only just 3 rules you just gotta abide by. All right, nearly done. Probably gonna be just as long as my Spider-Verse event review. So now returning back to the year 1000 for the extension, and that young blue person is communing with Wolverine, who's that male person in the preserve. Whereas like him and this mysterious woman are seemingly the last mutants left, because after the whole situation with the year 100 with the war with original Nimrod and the Prime Sentinels and the whole apocalypse situation. This taken to further along the line, in further in time. And one mutant tried to attack this guy, and it's like, oh, you gotta be quicker than that, because like, I knew you was about to attack, at the moment you thought about doing it. So he essentially is having like a crisis of faith, because he is like, okay, I'm probably not cool with, like, I want to experience more stuff. I want to know what else is out there. If my consciousness is absorbed into this thing and this collective, it's like, I'm not sure if I'm cool with that. So he's having this dialogue with Wolverine, and Wolverine is explaining to him, like, my people want their freedom. And it's like, well, why would they want something they never experienced before? And Wolverine's like, because I told them every night before they go to bed, essentially. I made sure to do that every day. And the mysterious woman is actually Mora. And they're stunned by the fact that this blue person like understood them as they were talking, because they speak English, and this dude understood them because I guess English at this point is a dead language, and he, just fascinated by dead languages. So they call it eavesdropping, but he's saying like, oh no, it's not eavesdropping, because technically I'm an observer, so I'm just observing you in your natural habitat. So I eventually learned how you guys speak, and they know about, and this guy knows about Mora's resurrection capabilities and resetting powers. So he's saying like, well, I could allow you to die and see like what comes about it when we reach to this particular point all over again, to see if like it was like, anything can change or whatever. So he's pretty much like not on board, and it's kind of like leaning towards like, hey, like, you guys can, I can allow you to die so we can see like how things might turn out differently and see what you can do differently, because it seems very curious if we ever get to this point again. And of course, Wolverine then somehow kills him, even though he was able to like predict like a move. But it turns out that you see all these like these two particular timelines where Mora stayed as long as possible, because, well, I'll get to it in a second, this is coming up pretty soon, but there's like a purpose of why these two particular lives there she lived as long as possible, or stayed around as long as possible, is for a particular purpose, because you need to know a particular thing. So Wolverine ends up killing her, but before then, like, I kind of skip over some things. The blue guy ends up mentioning to Wolverine and Mora is that, what you guys are lacking is time. Because evolution takes time. And during that path, which is slow in retrospect, humanity will never allow you to overcome them. They will build machines sooner than you guys will evolve beyond that. So that's where it leads to my kind. So he points out that the levels of Sentinels. Sentinels bought us years. Nimrods bought us decades. Uh, uh, After all, you aren't capable of recognizing the real enemy you face, how you could ever defeat them, because this is just how it ends for you. If you have no real alternative to offer, maybe this is my fate as well, immortality, divinity, as I have no choice but to become a small part of God, which is the phalanx. Because as he hypothesized, mutants will ultimately lose because humanity will build machines that will build more machines, will build more advanced machines that will eventually just neutralize it all, because there's haven't been no new mutants on this planet in ages, because they effectively neutralize them down to like your until you're the point where you're pretty much like a nearly extinct species. So you'll always have some kind of strife. Despite you trying to fight back, it's not gonna do you any good. Your greatest enemy is time. So eventually, like Wolverine takes out Mora because you lived this, extensive life at this point. I'm pretty sure it mentions this is the sixth life of Mora X. Branching humanity. Here's where the blue people come into place. They're called Homo novisma. Post-humanity is a manufactured branch of humanity not restricted by normal evolutionary constraints. The problem with a technologically based post-evolutionary state is the inevitable but naturally occurring paradigm loop between organic and technological constructs. A machine leap makes a post-human leap possible, and a post-human leap makes a machine leap possible. And a post-human leap makes a machine leap possible, and on until one of these two eventually reaches an end state. So she ends up resurrecting and goes to meet Xavier, and this is where she finally lays it on him, where it leads into the whole plan with Krakoa, where it's Xavier is having a crisis of faith because he always thought his dream that is supposed to be the true path, and he's always believed in that, but knowing what she knows, that no matter what route they try to go, they will always lose. So he now has to essentially compromise his belief and doing things that he originally probably would never even think of doing, and compromising about certain things about himself that he never thought he would do. He has to do it. And you see it through Mora's journal here. Entry 5, Xavier. It's taken months, but after allowing Charles Xavier to read my mind, I've successfully recruited him to my cause. Unlike myself, observation has not granted him perfect recall of my past lives, and as I will not permit him to read me a second time, he is now dependent on my interpretation of past life events. Eventually, this will not be enough, and I will have to open my mind to him again. Perhaps he will even act against type and do so himself, but all he will be looking for is a confirmation of suspicions he might already harbor. And so, regardless of how long our trial alliance lasts, the truth is my best friend. It's painful how hopeful and idealistic he remains. It's shameful how much he wants to love these people. He will learn. Entry 14. I have a choice to make. Until now, I have been lying to myself about what I am and am not capable of. I believe that I could manipulate these men into doing what I needed them to do without any repercussion to myself. I know now just how wrong I was. While we have become romantic, it is becoming clear to me that I am breaking Charles Xavier. And if I do break him, how will he become the man I need him to be in the coming days? My concern, my paramount fear, is that I fracture his psyche and eventually unleash something unexpected on the world. Entry 17. I had a breakthrough with Charles today. For the first time, he has stopped trying to fight me on what humanity is and tapped into the potential windfall of knowledge I represent regarding mutantdom. He had the most marvelous ideas regarding the potential tandem of several mutants and what they could accomplish if they worked in harmony. The only thing we lack is a mutant with the ability to tweak primal matter or give reality as we know it a push. I have used my expertise in genetic modification to find potential matches for both Charles and me to produce such a mutant. There are several possibilities, which is David Haller and the Legion, things like that nature. Entry 22, Magneto. Charles and I have successfully recruited Magneto. As it is with every meeting of ours, I am stunned at the casual arrogance of this man. If Charles is a rock that I have to wear down over decades, then Eric is something harder and less permeable. With him, loyalty is something that must be constantly earned. He allows for no deviation of intent, no wavering of belief. The idea that there will not be setbacks and that his constant anger will remain tamped down is a fool's dream. I only hope that our consistency of vision and commitment to mutantdom will outlast his rage. One positive thing of note, I have successfully imprinted the idea of stronghold in his mind. Of course, it has always been there, but seeing so many lives where an island, a world of some other celestial body, functions as a safe haven for mutants has left an indelible mark. Apocalypse. Apocalypse has made himself known to the world. Knowing him the way I do, and having aligned myself already with Xavier and Magneto, recruitment will not be an option until a much later date. He is in his raw primal state and sees the whole world as unfit. So much so that he will test everything to find something to build on. What must be done now is the avoidance of an apocalypse event and the prevention of certain Omega level mutants falling under his sway. She's done her due diligence. Like all the lives she spent with each of these people, she knows them inside and out, intimately, mentally, emotionally. So it's like there's no mistake. She knows them and figures like, hey, I can't deal with apocalypse right now, so we're gonna have to wait until he gets past his little issues. Time will have to, with him, have to be utilized. Xavier, I have underestimated Xavier's infatuation with the possibilities of what can be accomplished with mutant genetic material. Without my knowledge and against my advice, both Charles and Magneto have traveled to Bar Sinister and recruited Sinister to our cause. What is the thing that men do, where they think they can shape the world to their liking and bend others to whatever they will? This is a folly. And if what they told me is true regarding their meeting with him, he has produced his first chimera decades early and is Sinister himself. Magneto. We have lost Magneto. I had hoped, given the opportunity, to help make him a better man. Instead, all we have made is an enemy. I am just as bad as they are, if not worse. Xavier, I have decided to remove myself from the world. I have become too active a force in this and have put both myself and our great plan at risk. Charles and I will use Shiar Golem, a living husk, to test our early theories on what can be accomplished with adequate and properly prepared genetic material and a backup copy from Cerebro. We will fake my death using a replica, and I will return to the shadows where I belong. Okay, so we're on the final slide here. Whew. Slide 10, House of 10, Powers of 10. So the reason, like, the whole thing with those two particular lives where they lasted so long is that Mora has to figure out, as long as possible, live as long as possible, at least a couple of times, to see how will they win. She has to utilize her gift to not beat time, but essentially live as long as possible to see, like, figure out about these enemies' plans with, like, Nimrod, the whole thing with, like, Apocalypse, and when they need to move to recruit him, wherever going on with Sinister and his plans, and how to recruit him and adjust certain things, all these different machinations, and living as long as possible, even going as far as year 1000, to see, like, with the whole Phalanx situation and the whole preserve, all this other stuff. She had to live as long as possible to make sure, okay, because even still, she doesn't believe they will win. They just going as far as possible. She is going as far as possible to say, like, okay, where do we achieve our goal into making sure we're good, our kind is good, and it's going as long as possible. And I'm down to, like, I think at this point she's down to, like, 2 lives. So she's stressed out her life a couple of times, as long as possible, to see, like, okay, how we do this. And she's still kind of cynical and see, like, okay, I still don't believe we'll win, but this hopefully ultimately it doesn't, given recent stuff, but, like, try to push it as long as possible to make sure that everything is good with us, even though Magneto and Xavier at this point feel like they achieved something here and they can take the reins from her, but she doesn't believe, like, something will go awry, something will misstep, something that she couldn't foresee because she didn't live as long as possible. She tried, but she only gotten as far as she could, just to get the information about when Nimrod's turned on, the whole situation, the Phalanx, all this other stuff. She lives as long as possible before things come undone on the planet, so that way she can revisit and make sure strategic moves in place, so that way the mutants can always be one step ahead of their enemies as much as possible, without something happening to them as a whole. They can always be at the ready. But she's still, like, it's still irking her that the fact that it's, like, they will still lose somehow. There's going to be something. But then they also bring up to her about Destiny. Mystique keeps asking about her, and we can't keep pushing it as far out any longer. But she is, Mora is adamant. No precogs on this island. We can't have, like, people second guess every time they have some kind of vision. I get it, because the future is always in flux. No one thing is going to be like concrete, but any mutant with that power can easily run with it and start convincing people, and it becomes like a internal struggle that everything will come undone. But I believe which I think a lot of people believe, she just doesn't want Destiny on here because the fact that she had her burned alive in her second life or third life, whatever. And it's like, F that bitch. Because, like, she killed me. I don't want her on this island. But eventually, she does eventually come on this freaking island through some machinations by Mystique doing whatever, you know. But she like does not want precogs on this thing, and especially Destiny. So Magneto and Xavier is telling her like, you gotta trust us. You gotta let us, take it from here. We've been doing everything up to this point by the book as you told us. But it's like yeah, but they also want to let them know about how they got to this point, the details about how we managed to make it this far. And it's like, you don't want to tell them that because, because you don't want them to know that we will always lose, because that will kind of upend everything. They will panic. And they mentioned like, okay, the truth is that until now we have always lost, but this time it's going to be different because, we are different. And of course she like, fine, do what you will, but because she's very skeptical. But it's like it's out of her hands at this point. So now they look on in awe and just proud of themselves that they finally achieved something that they always wanted for their kind for the longest time, and it's finally here. A nation for mutants, like a glorified utopia. And that's pretty much Hawks and Pox. But Hickman got off of X-Men recently. They ended the whole Krakoa era, which is the main thing why I don't like. Because it's okay that Hickman doesn't want to continue on writing for the whole X-Men run thing, but you establish like a good new baseline. And I think because with X-Men coming into the MCU now, they want to like, okay, we need to get back to the old status quo of the X-Men Knights where people remember. So we don't want to confuse anybody when reading the comics when they bring in 90s type of X-Men. And it's like, bull crap. That's like, keep these things separate, man. Like, I love the 90s X-Men too, but we beating a dead horse with that rigmarole of that time. We got a new status quo now. I want to sit in this. I mean, I know it's been 5 years, but it's like Hickman can get off of it, can get off this kind of stuff, but you can just leave it alone. Let other people come in and tell a story they want, with leave Krakoa alone and let it be a thing. But you can still do stories with Wolverine without messing up Krakoa and let it always still be a thing. You can tell stories with Magneto or Mystique or whomever you want, but you don't have to uproot Krakoa era all completely. That's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, all for the sake of, getting back to the old status quo so people don't get confused when they bring in the X-Men and the MCU. And it's like, you could just make it separate because people got brains and can tell that one thing is different from another medium because they treat like the common audience or they're freaking nitwits. But that is probably my biggest issue because I love this new status quo of X-Men, and it should have been left alone. You can just build off of it. It's like, when at the time when the 90s X-Men was like the status quo for the longest time, and somebody's like, well, I don't want to do anything like that anymore, so let's go back to like giant size X-Men time. And it's like, no, we gotten past that. We don't need to go back to that. That's beating a dead horse at this point. And it's like, okay, we don't need to keep doing that all over again. God, it was so nice. It was like a great time for X-Men. Could just left it alone and just build on top of it. Hickman doesn't have to keep writing on it, but it's just any new writers can come in. It's like, oh, I got a story for Jubilee. It's like, yeah, she's leaving, Krakoa to go on this adventure in China fighting this bad guy because they need like their X-Men typical bad guys to be bad guys again to have somebody to fight. Or you can't come up with new people to fight or utilize, other bad guys that's not mutants as bad guys. This is like Dr. Doom isn't Spider-Man bad guy, but he fought him before. Doesn't change anything with the Fantastic Four. God, it's just that's my probably biggest hump. Everything else has been like nitpicky, but that's my biggest issue. This has been a great time for X-Men. Oh my God, it's just like it's so good. It's incredible, very well done. But that is my review for X-Men for a while. I think probably next time I bring up anything X-Men related is that X-Corp thing, because that, like I said, that part seemed interesting. But I'm going to hold off on that for a while because I want to get into a She-Hulk story, but it's a very unique She-Hulk story. I'm going to leave it as a surprise. But after that, I want to get back into some DC. But yeah, that's been like X-Men, man. But let me know in the comments below what you think of Hox and Pox. Definitely check it out. You can find it, in your local comic book store or, like Barnes and Nobles or whatever, where you get your comic books from. And like voice your opinions. Let people know that the Krakoa era is like the best era of X-Men that should be left alone and just let it be. But yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Don't know what I'm doing, but we'll see. But take care, and I'll see you all later. Bye.